What's up, y'all? It's Ben Bristow, the Heartland Maker here. Today I'm going to show you how I made this wood and leather Cot-Style dog bed that my dog Coda is currently enjoying. The idea for this project came from when I was making this wood bowl, which the link to that video will be in the description or somewhere on the screen when that video comes out. And it all came because he was laying on the cold hard concrete of my basement floor. And he's obviously a good dog, so I wanted to make something better for him, something that was more comfortable, something that he could relax on while I was working in the shop. And the idea the inspiration I got was from these outdoor dog beds that I saw online. The problem with those that I found was the sawdust that I'm gonna accumulate here is gonna stick to the fabric of those beds. And that's, I think, the beauty of leather is it's super easy to clean up. Now, the problem with that is I've never worked with leather, so I had to figure out, good dog, you are a good dog. I had to figure out and teach myself how to work with leather, so I figured the best way to do that was to just order half a cow and see what I could do. The first step in making this bed is to actually make the frame of the bed. Now, I'm a woodworker by nature, or by hobby, I suppose. And what you see me doing here is cutting the legs of the bed. I used 2x2 red oak for the legs, and then I used 1-inch dowel for the stretchers of the bed. So I set up a stop block on the chop saw and got to cutting. After cutting each of the legs to length, I marked down 2 inches. I did this because using a 1-inch dowel as my stretchers, I'd have a 1/2 inch above and a 1/2 inch below. Since I was going to be turning these legs on the lathe, I needed to find the center of all 4 legs, top and bottom. The reason you need to do this is so you can properly mount the legs on the lathe between centers so you get a nice even turn and a nice even roundness on all 4 legs. If you remember back earlier in the video, I made that 2-inch line. That's going to be my guide about where to start my turn. It's hard to see on the video right now, but it was pretty visible in person, so I started from that line and turned down to round, and as I was doing that I made a nice taper so it was pleasing to the eye. And I should let you know that I am using carbide turning tools. What I used, I think, for every part of this leg was the round cutter blade for the carbide. I have used high-speed steel turning tools before. I do like them a lot. There's just a few problems for them with me and my current setup. The first is they're expensive and you need quite a few of them to get done what you need to get done. The second is I don't have a grinder to sharpen them. So it's easier for me to just have the carbide and replace the cutting bit whenever it gets dull. And after I got done with one, I just repeated the process 4 more times. Fresh off the lathe, it's time to drill 2 holes in each of the legs to receive the stretchers. I'm using a Rocker portable drill guide to achieve this. It kind of replaces a drill press. Hashtag not sponsored, hashtag wish I was though. Anyway, I think we have a message from Live Ben next. Live Ben, take it away. Okay, we got our holes drilled on each side. But what we're going to need to do now, since we can have a little gap right there, what we need to do is sand or chisel off a little bit of that dowel and the one that goes in this hole as well, just so we can get them a tight, even fit. So we're going to have to take off on each side a little bit of the dowel right there. Thanks, Live Ben. I elected to go the sanding route. You could also use a chop saw. For me, it was easier just to slap a piece of 80 grit sandpaper on and just sand away a little bit of the corner on each side. It went really quick, really smooth, and I mean, they ended up going together and mating great. And I believe Live Ben has another message for us. Live Ben, off to you. Live Ben? I don't think your mic is on. Okay, well, what Live Ben is showing us is the fit that the sander gave us. It goes to the end of the dowel, or the end of the hole perfectly, and the other one's gonna mate on as well. So, mission accomplished. Thanks, Live Ben. Now to the portion of the video where I have little to no idea what I'm doing because I have never worked with leather. I just went on YouTube and looked up a couple leatherworking videos and decided I was ready to go. What I did is I took that half a cowl that I bought and I cut it to 4 foot by 3 foot. Now I'm cutting out 6 inches each way so I can hopefully fit my 3 foot by 2 foot frame within the leather that I cut, fold over the sides, glue them, stitch them, and go from there. But we'll see that later on. Right now, I'm just crossing my fingers that this fits because I don't work with a plan. Comment below if that's a crazy thing to do and if I should be on some sort of government watch list. After I found out the frame fit perfectly and did my own little personal celebration, it was time to dye the leather, and I used a gel dye which kind of gave the leather an antique look. It gave it some visual texture. Like I said, I don't really know what I'm doing when it comes to leather work, so I just followed the instructions on the bottle as closely as I could and did my best. Luckily for me, my dog Coda was there to give his supervision and pup approval as I moved along, so I think it turned out pretty well. The next day, after the dye had time to dry, it was time to bevel the edges, which, in hindsight, probably should have been done beforehand, but I think it still ended up working out anyway. The next step in edge work is to slick the edges with an edge slicker, properly named. I don't have one of those, and I didn't want to order one, so I made one out of Paduke, which I had left over for making these Christmas ornaments. Like the legs of the bed before it, I mounted the what would be edge slicker between the centers of the lathe and started turning it down to round. After I got it down to round, I started shaping the edge slicker and adding in each of the individual grooves that you would actually use for the edge slicking. To cut the actual slicker grooves of the leather, I used a different combination of my carbide tips. The first one that you saw was a rounded square. Then I used my go-to circle cutting bit. And then after that I actually broke into my pen turning kit since that one has a smaller diameter circle. And I put that in there. And the last thing I used was actually my paisley bit that's more generally used for broader cuts, but it has that narrow tip which got in there perfectly for those skinny pieces of leather. And then after that it was time to part the slicker off the lathe. To actually slick the edge of your leather, just apply some water to the edge, find the groove of your slicker that fits the edge best, and then run your slicker back and forth really fast. That's going to create a lot of heat, and from what I understand, bring the oils of the leather up to the top and give you that nice smooth surface finish. Now it is hard to see on this video, so I did provide some examples from some samples that I took earlier. Here's before the edge slicking, and here's how smooth it is after. After slicking all the edges, I decided to dye the edges that are going to be visible the same color as I dyed the rest of the piece. And to do this, I just used a little foam brush and then I wiped away the excess. Now it's at this point where my dog decided I wasn't giving him enough attention because clearly building him an entire bed just isn't good enough. Live Ben, take it away.
Why are you sitting on my lap? What are you doing? What are you doing? What? Coda, is this necessary? Is this necessary? You're a good dog. You are a good dog, but you're in the way. You are in the way.
After Coda and I came to an agreement that he would get off of my lap in exchange for him still getting in my way, it was time to apply a finish to the frame of the bed. For this I just used normal polyurethane. It's a good durable finish that I think should last really well to whatever abuse Coda puts it through, which hopefully is just laying on it, but we'll find out. Now back to the part of the project that I did with much less confidence. Here I'm applying contact cement to the edge of the leather and what would be the actual edge of the project. This is where the dowel is going to go through of the frame of the bed. Contact cement is pretty strong stuff from what I experienced and from what I understand. You just apply it to both surfaces that you intend to bond together, give it 5 to 10 minutes to tack up, and then it's super strong stuff that's not going to get torn apart easily. After I gave it some time to tack up, it was time to press it together. Now this actually went pretty smoothly for me for not having ever done it before, and I just followed the instructions in the can just like I did with the die, and it ended up going together pretty good for me. One of the instructions on the can was to use a press of some sort to press it together. It also said if you don't have one to hammer it down, and that's exactly what I did. If you know a woodworker, you know they love overkill. I'm not sure what leather crafters like, but since I'm a woodworker by nature, I decided overkill it is. So what I'm doing now is I'm punching holes for rivets, and then here I am setting rivets just to make sure everything stays bonded and stays together by the time I'm able to get my stitch line in. This part might have been my favorite part of setting rivets, and that was just peening over the top edge of the rivets. These rivet setters are really cool things. They have one side that's for actually setting the rivet, and then they have another side for peening over the rivet, and it made a really good result that I liked a lot. Next, it was time to set the stitch line. For that, I broke out the calipers, and I made the width of the calipers even with the center of the rivets, and then I ran one edge of the caliper along the edge of the leather, and that gave me my perfectly even stitch line that went right to the center of the rivet. And then it was time to break out my fancy new stitching chisels, which created a bunch of tiny little holes that would allow me to put a needle through the leather. As you can see, I did put a piece of scrap leather underneath where I was punching my holes, just so I wouldn't punch into my floor while I was doing it. And then now it's time to do a bunch of stitching, which I will save you the pain and agony that my fingers went through, because my holes that I punched were not big enough for the size of thread that I used. So my fingers hurt for like 4 days after this. In my defense, this is my first time stitching anything, let alone 2 2/3 yards of leather, using a string that was too big and a hole that was too small. But in the end, it worked out great. It just took a few days, but I couldn't be happier with the result. And now it's time for every maker's favorite part of every project, final assembly. Here I am putting in the stretcher of each part of the bed frame through the holes that we made that were contact cemented, riveted, and stitched together. Like I said, we love overkill. Also, I just wanted to pop in again and say, if you don't approve of slippers being worn in the shop, then you hate comfort. There's obviously a time and a place for work shoes, but assembling a leather bed with small oak dowels isn't that time or place. Gluing the legs on the bed was a bit more adventurous than I thought it would be. As you can see at the bottom of the screen there, I do have a Dremel out. It would have been a really tight fit. It probably would have been a perfect fit, but I didn't have any means to stretch out the leather as much as I needed to get everything to fit, so I ended up cutting off about a 1/4 inch off of each of the dowels just so I could still get the legs on. It still ended up being a good tight fit. It just didn't go together as smoothly as I would have liked, but hey, it all worked out perfectly in the end. The next day, after the glue had time to set, it was time to take off the band clamp that we put on and take this thing for a test drive, or test snap. Live Ben, bring us home.
What is this, huh? What is this right here? What is it? Good dog. Good dog. Right here, Coda. Right here. Right here, dog. Right there. There you go. You can step on it. There. Good dog. Good dog. That's a good dog. Good dog. Oh, good dog. Yes, a good dog. It is a good dog. Good dog.
Do you like it there, huh? Do you? You're a good dog. You are a good dog. Can you lay down? Lay down. Stay, 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 stay. Stay, stay. Stay, stay. Good dog. Good dog. Good dog. Stay, stay. Stay, stay. That's a good dog. That is a good dog. Stay, stay. Okay. Good dog. Good dog. You are a good dog. Is this better than laying on the concrete? Huh? Is it better than laying on the concrete? I bet it is. Hey, Coda. Coda. You're a good dog.